Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we're joined by Karen Stone. Karen is the Director of Leadership and Culture at Commvault. Karen, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm great. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for joining us on Friday afternoon. Karen, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey to where we are today.
Okay, so I guess I could probably take you back to when I was 12 and my entrepreneurial parents did a courageous thing. They moved out of the city and down to Cornwall, to the rural part in Cornwall, and they opened a local village shop. And so that was where I worked from the age of 12. And then they bought a hotel and then they bought an estate agents. And so I guess it was normal for me to see one, really hard work, and two, I think it very quickly taught me the importance of having the right talent in place. So that was, I'll show you how that circled back into my life. So after working with them and helping them run the hotel, I moved back to London and I joined Harrods. Because if you're going to start in retail, why not start somewhere really
at the top, didn't you?
Yeah. So I joined their management training scheme and I became a supervisor and a manager and an area manager. And then they asked me if I would run the management training scheme. So that was firstly a company that really knew how to put customer first. And secondly, I started to get this understanding of, as you're leading and managing, how you become a conductor, because everybody's different, right? And so you can't have the same conversation or the same approach with everybody. So when you're running diverse teams of people and groups of people, it was how do you adjust yourself for that audience? So that was an intense learning time. Then I flipped it all and I started my own business. And for about 9 years, I ran a catering business.
Oh, wow.
I love cooking. And that was very interesting because obviously I had to market, I had to do the sales, the finance, employ people to work with me. And so that was, again, very insightful, really at the coalface of how do you make even a very small business successful and sustainable. And then through actually the practice of karate do, which I've done for about the last 18 years, I was sitting down once after a practice and the person that founded our organization said, I'm looking for a consultant. Does anybody know anybody? And my hand just went up and I thought, what was that all about? And I didn't really know what they did. But anyway, they were a leadership and culture organization, very niche. And very unique because everybody in the organization, from the PA to the sales guy to the accountant, were all black belts in karate.
Really?
Everybody.
Oh, wow. Don't want to mess with those guys then.
No, so our sort of area of expertise, and we worked globally, I worked a lot in North America at that time and Europe, was we don't just talk about leadership and culture. We give people a visceral experience that they get it not just with their brain. So it's not just an intellectual, I sit in a classroom and somebody tells me about leadership. No, I understand leading and the different elements of that, how we might take leaders and put them in a dojo and actually get them to practice with us, because you can talk about how you connect and build relationships, but when you've got another human being in front of you that you've got to connect with, that's real.
Yeah.
And so fast learning happens in that sort of environment. So that was, for me, the consultancy side really, really told me how I had to listen really, really well. And not just to the stakeholders that invited us in, but actually to the people that reported into them, because actually I needed that multi-layer information. What's really happening? How are these people at the top impacting the people underneath, so that I could make really pointed recommendations? So that was, again, really great learning and a fantastic opportunity. And then about 8 years ago, I decided to move back inside an organization rather than working from the outside, work from the inside out. And I did that in a design engineering company, so with lots of chartered engineers, which was an interesting group of people, very brave. We had the world expert in high-rise buildings, so you got to meet some very interesting people.
Wow.
And then just over 3 years ago, I joined Commvault, and we both protect data both on premise and in the cloud, and we help our organizations get value from that data. So using data analytics, how can you make strategic decisions and get assets from that data that help you make those decisions? And that's what I do today.
Wow. Very interesting journey. You've seen all different aspects of it, which is very interesting. What is it that made you, what is it that you learned, you think, doing karate that benefit you now?
So much, Chris.
Take over?
Well, at the very simple level, when you're learning and you're beginning your journey, I guess, when you're under attack, how do you remain calm? Because actually, if you become stressed, you're not able to access your resources. So you become stressed, you get stiff, your body doesn't work properly, you can't defend yourself. So at a very basic level, sort of state management, I guess, but more sophisticated than that, I think, how do you connect and blend with somebody else's energy? So we practice something called the peaceful way. So it's not just learning how to fight, but learning how to live without having to fight. Because it's hard, whether you're looking at a martial art or yoga, and I am a yoga teacher as well, it's a personal development practice. They need to be contemporary, because the martial arts of old, where you were sent out to fight or die for your lord, that's not the world that we live in today. So being up to date means, how can you take an experience that you might practice either to keep fit, to reduce stress, to build resilience, and take what you've learned there and apply it in your whole life, whether that's at work or out of work. So being present's probably the most day-to-day thing. How can I be here right now, listening, not being distracted by other things that are going on, not be distracted actually by my own emotional state, but how can I really stay connected? Because actually I have more influence when I'm like that. So I think blending with other people, that notion, if you imagine in Aikido, where you see lots of people sort of being turned very gently, or seemingly very gently, and all they're really doing is they're using the energy of the other person
against them, right?
Yeah. And we would do the same thing in a conversation. So how do you take somebody's energy from a conversation? Let's say somebody's disagreeing with you, and oftentimes we defend our position against them. Well, they wouldn't be so heightened in their expression if they didn't care. So there's an energy that I want. I just want it directed in the right way. I want it to be contributing to the organization, not getting in the way.
But the ability to separate and think about that at that very point in mind, the natural reaction is to argue back with the similar energy, which doesn't get anywhere.
No.
Whereas the ability to separate your emotions and look at it logically, as you can. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, bringing those three things together is, how can you bring your best thinking, your emotional state, the appropriate emotional state for this particular moment in time, and from that, the right actions.
One of my best friends, he studied a martial art called Kitsa. Not sure if you know the martial arts. Sort of, it's very niche. He sort of, I don't know how to explain it. Basically, he can lock down certain parts of his body.
Right.
And they do some breathing techniques. It's basically it was the first, I think it was born out on they train like the Himalayas, stuff like that, right? And they do these crazy things where they'll stand on tiptoes for 4 hours, and they use a method called One Direction, where they focus on a particular point and they can block out pain and different things like that. And he was sort of he did that since he was a young kid. And the only reason I mention that now is that he never ever gets phased by anything. So when he's now an operations manager for an oil pipeline. It's a very stressful, very stressful job. He just flew to China for a few weeks, managing 300 people that don't speak English, and he doesn't speak a word of Chinese. And he's got to manage this multi-million-pound pipeline every day that it doesn't run, costs them hundreds of millions, literally. And he says to me that his training is what makes him so. He doesn't get emotional. He looks at everything with logic, steps back and assesses everything. And I think that's why he's such an amazing operations director, is because of it. He's told me he says that the martial arts training that he had is what helps him be able to make those huge decisions, but in a very practical manner.
Yeah, that's perfect, I think, because I would say that, there's much talk of resilience and well-being in organizations, but actually to stop what you're doing in order to go and do a mindfulness session or to practice yoga and then come back and be exactly like you were before, that's not the point.
Yeah.
So how do you apply it? How do you learn the strategies that work when you're in a meeting, when you're at your desk, when you're in a difficult situation, and do the right thing then?
Very interesting. So what is it that led you back to the practitioner side? What is it that made you gravitate towards coming back from the consultative side back to practitioner?
Yeah, I think both have their advantages. You become the strategic advisor as a good consultant and you can see change happen, but it's quite different when you're operating from the inside, because actually you're there for a sustained period of time and you have probably a more honest view on what's happening in the organization and day-to-day conversations that actually can help the business transform. So I think that sustained level of impact and the strength of the relationship with a wide, diverse group of people is the thing that really helps maintain momentum.
So where we are today then, what would you say is your area of expertise?
So I guess what I do now is I'm a bit of a geek around neuroscience. So
that's a good thing.
It is a good thing, because it just was like loads of aha moments going off in my life. I'm going, well, I know that works, and now I understand why it works. And when you've got a technical audience, they really like that as well. So don't just tell me that I've got to go off and try this and work it out for myself. But this is actually what happens to human beings when they think, when they react. And joining those things together is really, really powerful. So that's not necessarily an area of expertise. It's something that I bring into my work. So I have a great sense of autonomy, and I think everybody in this organization has that. That's what I really value, to go and bring my skills, my experience and strengths to the things that are going to make a difference. So I work with leaders, and sometimes that's about coaching. Sometimes that's about helping them think differently, which I know that they sort of value from me. I love helping people learn. So things like, how do we have influence with others in everyday conversations? How do we adjust our language for different audiences that makes an impact, that the messages resonate and really get through? But actually not looking at leadership just from that sort of top tier in the organization, but how do people every level in the organization access their own leadership, their personal leadership even, to make their contribution in the business? So coaching, definitely love coaching. I love delivering workshops, and I love that sort of strategic facilitation too.
So on the neuroscience piece, you caught my attention there. What's one thing around neuroscience that HR leaders don't know, or they're just not paying enough attention to?
I think what's very interesting, some of the research that David Rock has done around change, because, hey, which HR leader is not in a business that's experiencing change right now? So what are the triggers that people, when they're experiencing change, stops them being effective personally, but also stops them being part of that change? So how does that slow people down? And we've all got to get on the bus, and we've got to actually be really, really agile in our thinking. And I think just that one thing, if you haven't come across the SCARF model, learn about that, because knowing those triggers can help you adjust the message to make sure that people feel safer, rather than actually a message well intended which makes people feel threatened and unsafe. And you know what? Our brain is not working well when we're in fight or flight.
Yeah.
It's not programmed to do that. It's programmed to shut off.
Yeah. Could you share some of those triggers?
Well, yeah, one of them is, so SCARF is an mnemonic. So one of them is about status. So is this change going to impact my position in the organization? Another one is certainty. So is anybody telling me what really is happening? I'm not really sure. And so I'm imagining all sorts of probably horrible things are going to happen. And actually that's the exact time when we need to communicate more. And yet oftentimes as leaders, we communicate less. We think we can't share this. And so what does that do? It creates the opposite effect than what we intended. So relationship are another one. Fairness, what's been interesting about the fairness one that I find really fascinating is, even if a decision is made that has negative consequences for me, if I consider it's come about fairly, I'm still much more likely to accept it.
Yeah, of course, because you know
Fascinating.
why, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. Any of the leaders I speak to going through change is the complete transparency, which really helps them.
Hmm, hmm.
Because as you said, if people know how it impacts them and the why, then it's fine. But if you don't know why and you're just going through change, then it's toxic. It's toxic. Even if those conversations are really hard to have, you have to have them.
Yeah, yeah.
There's open and as you said, most of the time, if they understand the reason why because of the business, etc., then they're more likely to be able to accept that and overcome it.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I haven't come across that before, so even I'm going to look into that after this.
Excellent.
Could you share one transformation that you've been through or a project that stands out to you that you're really proud of?
Yeah. So quite recently, starting about a year ago, we were looking at how we distinguish ourselves from our competitors as we attract talent, but also really homing in on what it is about our organization that keeps people here and what is it they love about us. So the way that we went about that was I decided that we would really become storytellers, not just talk about storytelling, which a lot of people are doing, but really tap into the authentic stories that our people are telling about what it's like to work here. So I think we gathered over 100 stories from around the different theatres. So going over to APAC and the Americas and in Europe and EMEA, and saying, what is it? Tell us about an example. Tell us a story about working here. Mm-hmm. And that was such a humble experience because we just heard all these beautiful stories that were so authentic and true. And that when we then put them into a key message, they resonated so perfectly because they hadn't come out of the leadership team.
Or
they
marketing.
hadn't come out of the HR people. Yeah, they were actually from the people.
Yeah.
And so, I'm really proud of that because what we have is evolved from, those 100 stories distilled down into a succinct message.
And it's funny how it's such a, it doesn't cost a lot of money to do.
No, just time.
It's not exactly just time. There's no secret. It seems so simple, but it's so powerful at the same time.
Yeah. And you learn more about your business really at the heart of it by asking those sorts of questions.
It's the people that do the job every day, but beneath the management team that know the most about the business.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are facing everything on a day-to-day basis. So many organizations I speak to, I do say, well, have you asked? Have you asked your employees?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we haven't done that. Even me, I asked the members, saying, guys, what questions do you want me to ask to the people on the podcast? And everyone was like, here you go. And I was like, oh, amazing. I've got all my questions now. Rather than me sit there and guess and think, just ask the people that within the organization. So what kind of things did you get out of that? How did you use that? How did you use that information then?
Okay. So I remember getting all of these, transcribing all of these key messages and laying them all out in our office.
Was it just by email?
My team. No. They were all face-to-face. They were all
face-to-face. Okay, that's an important point. Face-to-face.
And we videoed them as we were going. So we had that. So I transcribed them all. And then I started to post-it note them and get them into little clusters and go, okay, there's lots of comments about that. And so we had things like autonomy. People really valued the freedom to be able to make a difference, do the things that were important. So that was definitely one. There was a strong sense of sort of this family and working together. And that was different in different cultures, but it was still a common thread of message. So what we ended up with by looking at probably 3 or 4 key areas, and also that people really loved our product, which isn't always the case. So that was affirming, a nice thing to hear. So we ended up with our people promise, which is the freedom to make an impact together. So the freedom part, the impact, making a difference and doing it in a collaborative way. So that's where it got to.
Amazing. So do you use that now on your recruitment campaigns, or do you have that stored somewhere on the website?
We are just building that out, Chris, as we speak. Well, it's one of the reasons I'm in the US next week is to we actually have some very cool artwork. So we've just gathered, we asked our employees to send photographs that expressed, because we have expressed our values. So we had a very strong set of values that had sort of grown up with the organization. Everybody said were true and important. But the way we expressed them was, you could have moved from a previous organization and goes, yeah, I had those there as well. So we wanted a way of describing them that people really understood what it meant here. And so we asked people to
do the same thing again. You asked them again. I
yeah,
love it.
exactly,
I love it.
exactly.
So,
And so
so refreshing.
we have, you know, something that's authentic and real and meaningful for our people. And so we got them to send in photographs and say, send us your photographs that express the culture and the values to you. So we have 3,000 photographs.
Wow.
And the week I get back from the US, we're going to be building out some artwork. So with a back image, I don't know if you've seen some of this mosaic artwork.
Yeah, like you can make a collage.
Yeah.
Have all of it. That would be amazing. You should
so
have
time lapse. We're going to do.
You should have the Commvault logo, but built out of the images.
Well, we've got an image. I'm not going to tell you what it is because that will be spoiling the surprise, that expresses our people promise that we're going to be building from all of these images.
Nice. Oh, you're going to build the image from the image.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I look forward to seeing that then.
I wish
because you're doing more than just that, because by asking them for the feedback, for the photos, it's such a good engagement for you to do as well. Yeah. Indirectly, people when you ask for someone's opinion, it really makes an impact on someone that you care. You're actually asking me for my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you're doing this at all levels of business, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Yeah. Very unique. And said something that doesn't take a lot of resources or money.
People aren't, you know, they're not sitting there saying, I'm not going to speak to you. They want to talk.
Yeah, just to ask them the questions.
Yeah.
That's very unique. Very, very, very interesting. So I look forward to seeing that. And I've seen a few companies do, they're doing a similar thing with video as well. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of companies now, rather than posting like job descriptions, they're posting videos of people that are doing that job currently in that company. And the impact has been huge.
Yeah.
Rather than a generic marketing message or generic message that's been put out there by the team, you know, it's so you can't really connect with it with just a generic. Job specs,
it's flat, isn't it? We don't operate in a 1D world.
Not anymore.
No.
I would much rather watch a video or hear from the people that are in that company doing that job as well. So very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I've got my thoughts going now, and I'm sure many people listening to this right now are already typing away going, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to steal your ideas.
Conversation.
Maybe this revolutionary idea, guys. Maybe have conversations and ask your employees for their feedback.
That's really, that's the difference I'm saying is you can have a conversation or you can have a leading conversation. A leadership conversation is one that engages, that inspires, that motivates, that taps into that passion.
Yeah, very interesting. HR, we know that the skills of HR have changed dramatically. I was just wondering, from your point of view, not being in a generalist role, what skills do you believe will be more important in HR in the future, and how are you guys preparing for that?
Yeah, well, definitely leading change is top of my list, Chris, I think. And why wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
But, we had a conference that we ran in EMEA for all of our sales managers on leading change. So how do we equip them with the skills? And it included storytelling. How do you build trust? How do you keep resilience in yourself and in the people that you're leading? And how do you influence others in the conversations that you have? Because, you can say, leading change is hard, and how do we help change happen? Because often, many change initiatives fail very, very early on. So, we're talking about human beings. And so that's where some of that science stuff comes in, I think, because if we don't really understand human beings and what makes them tick, how can we ask them to be different? So leading change, number one. I think for HR, generally, no matter what your role, you've got to get to become a good consultant. And that's back to my point earlier on about being able to listen really well, and to be able to make credible recommendations because you understand your business. It is not enough to look in your HR world. Go out there and have conversations and understand the wider business. And so therefore your role becomes a balance between being strategic. I can see round corners. I can understand how that fits with that, but also tactical, because come on, we've got to deliver. Right?
Yeah, no, of course.
Balancing both of those things. And of course, interestingly, all of the data that's becoming increasingly accessible to us, how do we bring that to our conversations to validate what we're saying? And ultimately, how do we become more agile? Agile in the way that we think, agile in the way that we feel and make other people feel, and agile in the way we operate.
So when you had those team leadership meetings, what were some of the challenges that they expressed to you that they were having, just out of interest?
Well, definitely, because we did some work on coaching, and of course, as many managers, you have built your career around, sharing your insight and your skill with others. And so it's a real mind shift for many managers to suddenly say, I haven't got all the answers and I don't need to have all the answers. So how can I have a conversation that taps into the potential and unlocks the potential of each of the people in my team? Because do you know what? Performance, it just goes through the roof when I'm really tapping into that, rather than it's just me doing the telling. So that was probably one of the most joyful things that I've been working on, is helping managers and seeing them transform not only what they're doing, but seeing the way their faces light up now that they suddenly get it. Their eyes are sparking, and they do share great stories about what's different, not just what's different about them, but what's different in the people that they're leading.
Mm-hmm. What kind of questions do they ask, or have you advised them to ask their employees?
Well, I think it's the question over the telling is the number one thing, and going below the surface. So I guess one of the resounding I think is, tell me why that's important. So we might ask a question, so we'll achieve. Well, I want to be able to do that next year. And we miss that the motivation question there is, so why is that important? That's a multifaceted question, because it gives me information as the manager that I can work with. Oh God, this person really appreciates being valued and recognized for what they do. That's something that I can do. But it's also enabling the individual to think through that question. It's not maybe on the tip of their tongue. So
why is that important to me?
Goes below the surface. They get better insight about themselves. And you know what? As a manager, you understand them better. Mm-hmm. That's helpful for the future.
No, definitely. I think it's a big shift, because when I first became a manager, it was the complete opposite. It was like, just delegate, and do what I say. And it's only when I personally just started asking my team members, what is it you want to achieve individually, and understand that, and then build around their own personal goals, whether it was buying a house, or some people it's something simple like they just want somebody to go and have a nice meal once a week. It could be something really, and then both internally, you always assume people want to go up in the company, and I'm like, actually no, they don't. They want to stay where they are. They love their job. They don't want to be a manager. They don't want to move up. And you can't, unless you ask the right questions, you'll never know that. And when I realized I used to have that conversation on a weekly basis, on my one-on-ones, and it changed all the time. And that's what fascinated me. People's both their personal development needs and what motivates them changes consistently. And then when I got into HR and I was sort of the annual review, I was like, wait a minute, you can't speak to someone once a year about what they want to achieve and what you want to help them achieve on a yearly basis as well. Very interesting questions. You mentioned technology earlier. How are you guys playing with technology, and are you already seeing the effects that can have in what you guys do?
I think we're starting to. I think ultimately it is going to help us be more efficient, and what that's going to help us do is have more time to invest in building the relationships, strengthening those relationships, which as a result means that we'll be more trusted, especially when we can bring, as I said before, when we can bring data to validate our recommendations. Actually, that's beyond me having credibility because I'm an expert in, or I've worked for X amount of time in this field, and so I know what I'm talking about. But actually, it's a real aha moment when you can go, do you know what? We've been gathering this data for ages, but have we really looked at it in this way? And have we correlated it in this way? Because look what it's telling us. The information's there. It's just the way that we look at it maybe is we can look at it differently now.
Yeah, it's empowering, right? Before it was just, this is my opinion based on my experience, but now it's like, look, the numbers don't lie. And I think every department's had that luxury with finance, marketing, sales, and now it's just the turn of HR to be able to bring some data to the table to validate what they're doing. Is that something that are you comfortable with data? Did you have to do a lot of learning yourself? Because I think a lot of people are like, whoa, it's a new.
I'm still learning.
And
I guess in the last 6 months, I've gone through a personal transformation, because if anybody had given me a spreadsheet a year ago, I'd have been like, no, thanks. I'd go and do the other stuff. But now I've got a bit geeky about it.
Oh, really?
But not for data's sake, because it's helping me make good decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you look at it from that perspective, then it becomes very exciting. I think something I'm battling with, even with a small organization here. My business partner Shane deals with all of the data we have, and I try and stay away. But then when he comes over and gives me some great insights about our customers and what we're doing, I'm like, oh wow, and then I get excited about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the initial fear, overcoming that initial fear of it, and then after that, you see the huge. We have a chatbot, for example, on our website. And some of the data we get from that is incredible, absolutely incredible. We're like, wow, okay, people are doing this, that. They're asking for for example, the chatbot, we're getting the same questions over and over again. Now we're like, okay, we need to assess that because people are asking this question all the time. So maybe we should be giving them that piece of information. Something so small, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
What about, I think a big part of being successful in your role is, of course, communication between the rest of the team and the other leaders in the organization. Could you share some insights that you have in terms of how to effectively engage and build relationships?
Yeah,
in the organization?
I can. I think because I think I'm privileged to have some very strong relationships. So when I'm not traveling, I spend my time in the EMEA region, and the leaders that I interact with, sort of on a day-by-day basis, we have a really two-way, open, and focus and productive relationship. And I think that's come about for a few reasons as I reflect on it. And funnily enough, somebody asked me this question in the business who had recently joined to say, how have you done that? And it made me sort of think back to say, yeah, how have I built those relationships? And I think firstly, it was, how can I show value as soon as possible? And for me, that was about delivering something impactful that helped build that credibility. And secondly, how quickly can I learn about their business and the language that they're using? Because actually, I don't want to be sitting there with an HR hat on. I want to be sitting there as a conduit for high performance, for business and performance success. I want to be talking the language of performance, organizational performance and success. I don't want to be talking the language of HR if there was such a thing.
Yeah.
So I think that, being a strategic advisor, and I would say also, in those interactions and supporting them is to help them think differently. And I know that we have a finance director in EMEA, and she has shared with me in the past, Karen, you make me think, whenever I have a conversation with you or do something together, I go away thinking differently. And I think, great.
Good.
That's what I want to hear.
Done my job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you go about doing that? Like, actually, what did you just research each person, or like what did you actually do?
I didn't do research. Beforehand, I guess my research was in the moment and beyond the moment. So getting that face-to-face time, which fortunately in the way that we work, I can do that. I think it also happens, the momentum builds. You do something great just over there, other people hear about it and want some of it. And I guess that's where my consultancy skills have been really valuable, is to be able to not pick something off the shelf and say, oh, I'll do that for you, but to be able to customize something, whether it's something working with the team, in a way that's absolutely pertinent. And, those consultancy skills got honed with really, really challenging big clients. I should be able to do it inside an organization.
Yeah.
So how am I going to be helping you transform your business? And you know what? It's not about hero leaders. It's about hero teams who are matrixed, who are living in and delivering through empowered networks.
Yeah. So I think the consultant side, you must have been good to, do you think it's important? Do you think that HR people don't talk about the successes enough as well?
I think
it's a bit of a fine line.
Europe, we're not particularly good as a nation about bigging ourselves up.
The US, they love it. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's different. It is different. It's definitely different. But I think when you can do it with humility, where actually you're not saying I did this at the end of the day, and that's what's great about it. This is what has happened as a result of, yes, I have had some input, but the people that have delivered it aren't even the leaders. They're the people throughout the teams and the businesses that we're working with. So when you can evidence, where are we now? What are the challenges? Where do you want to be? What's that picture of, what does success look like for you? And that's the question. People can answer what's the problem, but they can't always answer. So what does success look like? What will it feel like? What will we hear when we know we've got it? So then to be able to work with them to help them move towards that, well, we've evidenced it. We've evidenced the way we want to be, and we've evidenced the starting point. And so the milestones along that journey give people a sense of movement towards. And I think that's really important. It doesn't happen poof like that.
Yeah. I love that thing you said earlier about, what does success look like? Because whenever you ask someone that, it's so funny how people have huge challenges and you ask them, so, okay, what will success look like then? And then they go, so what are we working towards? Well, just not where we are now.
Yeah.
Even in huge global brands that I speak to, they're just sort of working towards something. But they don't know what it looks like yet. We don't know what success looks like, but we're going to keep going towards it.
Yeah. Maybe that's the one question. Have one question and make sure it's that one.
Yeah, no, exactly. See what happens.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest challenges you've faced then as a leader in the organization? What was one thing that sort of stands out to you that you kind of had to overcome early on in your career?
I think when you're having to influence people outside of where you sit, let's say, as you move in your role, maybe to more global roles, is how do you connect with people and build the relationships, often from afar. It might be in a conversation, in a WebEx or something. So I've still got to understand this person really, really well. I can't do that face to face. Fortunately, we have the technology to help make that happen. But I'm definitely one, I do like the face to face conversation because I think it's more real and you have a different quality of conversation. However, with the tools that we have, that's still possible. So I think connecting to people outside of your immediate area without always having to jump on an airplane or get on some sort of other transportation, that's been one of them. And I would also say keeping up to date. I am a voracious learner. Mm-hmm. If you're not keeping your own toolkit up to date and actually ahead of other people's, I don't know that you can be adding value, because we get out of date really, really quickly. Our thinking gets stale. And so, I know we were talking previous to this about, how we need to change the way that we do things, that the way that we did them, even last week's probably out of date sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's back to agility, I think. So, for me, it's about knowing the things that I know about. So, okay, this is the point that I'm at. And what can I add to that? What can I enrich it with that's going to continue to add value over time? And that's about also understanding, well, what's the business struggling with? What are those pain points? And are they things that I can support and help and, help remove some of those barriers or work with them around them?
Yeah. I think you mentioned the last point was really interesting, because recently a lot of people said to me, Chris, what I do is, the business has all of these challenges, but what are the areas where I can have the most impact and just focus on those? Because there's so many things you can be doing.
Of course. But
if you can just, and especially if in terms of the leadership team, if you can align what you're doing with their biggest priorities, which are the biggest priorities of the business, and you can help them there, then that's really going to make a big impact and propel. And in a lot of cases, some of the things that they're dealing with aren't anything to do with their role. Or traditionally anything to do with their role, but they help out and try and make an impact there. And it's some very interesting things that come out of that as well. Yeah. And staying in the loop and understanding what are the business needs, not just from a HR standpoint. No. And seeing how you can help that.
Yeah. And I think going back to that question, I think probably culture is the thing that can hold us back. So in my experience, culture is the most powerful training program that we have operating in a company. And there's a quote that's something like, every organization is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. But you have to think about that a little bit.
I know what you mean.
But so the culture that they have is driving what they're getting. And if oftentimes we try to start at the bottom and say, okay, we need to change the way that we're doing that. But actually, if we're not addressing and transforming the culture, then do you know what? It isn't going to fly and isn't going to sustain. It's a bit like the analogy I often use is, imagine you've been to the you've been to the garden centre and you've bought the best quality, most expensive tomato seed. And you think, great, I'm going to grow fantastic tomatoes. And you bring it home, and sometimes when you've had grow bags and you've left them outside, I've got one outside here from last year, and you just think, well, there's still soil in there, I'll stick it in there. it doesn't grow very well. And the soil is like the culture. So we have
the environment,
we employ talented people. You know, they are the best quality seeds, and we put them in soil that doesn't help them do their best.
I've seen that. I've even had people on in companies I've worked in, and they were absolute superstar where they came from, and they get put in organizations, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, why are they failing? They were in the last company, they were this, and this, and you see it happen time and time again. I've even had personal friends of mine that were very successful in their roles that have moved into organizations that have just then diminished, but they're very talented. Why is it not working? And it's the other way around as well. One other thing, I had an amazing culture on my team, and in our company we had about 400 employees. We had about 7 managers and I was one of the managers, and I built an amazing culture with our team, and I'm proud to say it. We had like everyone was I was quite, with my hiring, I'll be honest, I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, because I was just winging it. There was no management training at the time, and I'd always hire like athletes, very competitive people from I had 3 guys from the army. I had this crazy competitive team. It was all people standing on desks. It was just crazy. It was a crazy environment. And what my CEO started doing, I didn't even realize, is when we had someone who was struggling in another area, one of the team, they would put them in my team. And all of a sudden, because I had this team where anyone who came in, everyone was helping each other. Other sales teams were very selfish. I want to be the best sales guy on my team. I'm not going to help my peers. We built this. It wasn't even intentional, I'll be honest. We built this team where anyone who came in, everyone else on my team gravitated towards them to help them achieve. And if someone was slacking, then the rest of the team will pick them up. And it became a very interesting team where everyone was trying to help each other achieve their targets. And I was sort of just orchestrating. And I noticed that whenever we brought people in that were struggling from other teams, they would just pick them up. And all of a sudden, these people would go from a very low performer in the organization to an amazing salesperson. And it was like, wow, the environment that we threw them into crafted them. And then it became a thing where I was like known as the manager in the team, where we just bring all these guys, all these low performers coming into the team, and we were growing them. And it was an amazing experience to do that. We were quite unconventional. We'd go to gym together at lunch every day. We'll go for a run. So in the middle of the day, everyone's a bit down and a bit tired in the office. I'm like, guys, do you want to go for a walk around the block? Something simple. Go for a walk around a block. Everyone comes back energized. So I can definitely see the impact of the culture, and it's a big buzzword at the moment, but I don't think many people understand really what it means.
I agree.
It's something that's always on the agenda and always spoken about, but what organizations are doing about it quite questionable, in my opinion, as well. So that leads us quite nicely onto the quick fire round, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions. And you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers.
Okay.
Are you ready? What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior leader?
I think it was finding the sweet spot, really, between taking my skills, experience and knowledge, and then finding the place where I could really make a difference. That took some exploring, but
yeah, I can imagine. What was the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Okay, so a mentor of mine once said, Karen, you need to be practicing verbal acupuncture.
Oh, wow. You've got to elaborate on that.
Okay. So in acupuncture, where you put
I know what it is
to release the energy. So verbal acupuncture is similar. So what's the question that I ask that, if it's answered behaviorally, is going to release the energy inside this team, this individual, or this organization? Verbal acupuncture.
Wow. Very interesting. I'm already thinking about questions now already. What's one book that you would recommend to our audience, and why?
Can I have more than one?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say start with why, even though I know some of your other guests have said that, because I think it's a simple concept that people understand well, and boy, it gets to the heart.
It really does.
That's one. Amy Cuddy's book, Presence. Great book, great insights, got the neuroscience in it for my geekiness. And I think I've worked with lots of female leaders that have found that book enormously helpful in helping them bring presence to their leadership style. My third one would be, again, going down the science a little bit, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
And what is it you took away from that one?
He talks about the superhighway, the thinking that happens unconsciously fast, and then the more sort of considered cognitive thinking, and how they're different, and how one overrides the other, but how we can use our more strategic thinking to make wise decisions.
Fantastic. What's one internet resource that you use to keep up to date with current events, learn,
Yeah.
benchmark?
Love watching TED Talks. Always getting recommendations for TED Talks and recommending them to others. So that's great. We have lots of dialogue on our intranet at work about people sharing different things. So that's always good. And I like LinkedIn. If you're following people that post interesting blogs and articles, that's also, I find that really useful.
It's so funny. I'm about to do a post probably next week now. 99, I think 100% actually of all of my guests, we're 50 now, have said TED Talks on LinkedIn. It's not a coincidence, right? But
No.
to think of that number, the fact that every single guest has said LinkedIn and TED Talks is incredible. They clearly made their mark
Sure.
as well.
And they're free.
And they're free, right? And it's just, I think it's more now, more than all of that, because this information has always been out there. It's more about the way it's now, people are now consuming content. People are now consuming content. It's easy. It's a video. It's time efficient. Anyone can access it. It's on YouTube or on their website, and it's free. And it's good content now. So even with the podcasts, it's crazy the amount of content you can get now for free. It's just unbelievable. There's never been a better time to learn or to be informed. So there's no excuses for anyone. No. What's one thing about your business that most excites you today?
I think the opportunity, the point that we're in now with the cultural piece, so getting that people promise and our values out there into the business. Our talent acquisition team are working really hard on building that sort of external attraction, expressing authentic messages, as you say, in an interesting, interactive way. I think that's going to be great when we're there with that. And I think the work that we are now continuing to do around helping people understand the values that they've known for a long time, but actually drilling that down into what does that mean we expect of you and you expect of us. So that sort of two-way virtual dialogue almost, where we're working together on this. It isn't somebody telling somebody else. Actually, the sum of the parts is what's making this business really grow and thrive.
Amazing. Can I add one more question?
Of course.
I'm interested to know if anyone looking that would like to work for your organization, what is it you guys are looking for?
That's a good question. I think we are always looking for great people who in the sales part of the organization. So we really, we've got, apart from the corporate functions, we have our sales leaders, and they work through our partner organizations. So there is relationship skills, that influencing, that able to build trust and credibility. I think are qualities that we definitely find very attractive. And similarly on the more technical side, so those people that can not do technical for technical's sake, but also are interested in building relationships and collaborating, because we'll often have silos in organizations between the technical functions and the sales functions. And you know what? This cross matrix thing is absolutely key. Not just for us, but
because normally they're completely separated. But when you get these guys together, some of the most amazing conversations happen.
Absolutely.
And some of the best innovations. I think that's the key thing. So many organizations that I know that do that successfully, some of the best ideas and innovations when you get these two groups together. When
we're doing that, the inefficiency that is often keeping us stuck and blocking energy, actually, go back to that analogy, it goes there and then they hold it for their bit and it never gets to there.
And vice versa.
And we don't come up with the best solution.
It was the same thing in any company. In my company, it was always sales versus marketing. It was like crazy. We're both one in the same. And then some of the biggest challenge we had, and vice versa, the sales guys could tell the marketing guys, this is what our customers are saying. So this is what you need to do. And then marketing said, well, how can we help you guys develop what you're doing to increase our sales? And all of a sudden, this boundary that just disappeared was amazing. And I've seen this in organizations now more and more. So very interesting. I think there's something I'm going to ask more now for the episodes. I think it's important because I've had people come to me and say, I'd love to understand, what these companies are looking for, Chris, because it sounds like a great company. So certainly going to add that. Well, look, you've been an amazing guest. So
Thank you.
really
It's been great
appreciate.
to speak with you.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time out to join us, and I love your background as well. And I love we have to just come teach me some moves sometime.
Anytime, Chris.
I don't know if I can do yoga though. I'm pretty unflexible, so I'm going to be like really awkward and just.
That's exactly why you should be.
That's what everyone says. I know. That's exactly what anyone of it. I don't know why. I knew you were going to say that. I shouldn't even have said it, because that's exactly what I should be going to it as well. Give our listeners, before we part, give our listeners if there's one parting piece of guidance that you can give to other leaders out there, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's something that we use in martial arts, and I think it's absolutely relevant in business. It's about maintaining beginner's mind. So beginner's mind in the martial arts would be, well, don't ever think that because you're a black belt or a fifth dan or whatever it is, that you know everything. And it's the same in business. Continue to always be curious and don't get complacent.
Fantastic. Well, look, guys, make sure you head over to hrleaders.com. There you'll find all of the show notes on episode, everything we've been talking about, linked to all the resources. Thank you so much again for joining us, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thanks a lot, Chris.